Hi everyone, I'm Elspeth from Ragged Life. I'm also the author of Rag Rug Techniques for Beginners, and in this tutorial video I'm going to be talking you through rug hooking. You can probably tell from my accent, but I'm British, and actually this technique is done differently across the pond in the US. So if you're interested in seeing the differences between British rug hooking and American rug hooking, you might want to check out my other video. But for the time being, all you really need to know is this technique looks like this on a larger scale. You can use it to make rugs, cushions, wall hangings, you name it. It's a beautiful technique because it looks very close-knit and very neat in appearance. And the way that you build it up is by pulling little loops of fabric through a rug backing. And before we kind of go into the technique itself, I'm going to run through all of the equipment that you need to give this technique a go. If you're interested in convenience, then we actually do a loopy rag rug kit on our Ragged Life website, which has in all the tools to be able to get you going. The clue's kind of in the name, but the first bit of equipment you need to be able to do rug hooking is a rug hook. They come in different shapes and sizes, so you can get rug hooks that have more of a rounded end, like this one from Ragged Life here. But you can also get ones that have like a pencil end that's longer and thinner, and you can even get rug hooks that have a curved neck to them. Those are mainly for people who have wrist problems. The main thing that you need to know is you don't need to invest in a whole load of expensive equipment. I do this full time, and the only rug hook I work with is this Ragged Life one here. The main things that you're looking for is it needs to have a thick neck because that pierces holes in your rug backing so that it's easier to pull your fabric back through. And you need a pointy end to the rug hook because that allows you to pierce through the rug backing rather than getting kind of caught in it. And in terms of the handle, it's just personal preference. I personally like this rounded one, but some people prefer a different style. Just have an experiment and see which one suits you. The next bit of equipment which you need to do rug hooking is your backing. And here in the UK, we mainly use hessian as the base. It's called burlap in America. It's exactly the same thing. There are other bases which you can use. In the US, for example, they sometimes use rug linen or monk's cloth. But in the UK, we mainly use hessian because traditionally it was the old potato sacks that we used to use over here. And it's kind of keeping the same recycling ethos to this day. In terms of what you're looking for, you don't want something that's super tight or super loose. You're looking for something that's around 10 holes per inch, but don't panic about it too much because you can cut your strips wider or narrower to compensate for a slightly tighter or looser weave. Other than that, my only bit of advice is nothing super hairy because it'll just make your life slightly harder. When you're kind of doing the rag rigging, you'll end up covered in these fibers. If you buy hessian from an upholstery company, they're normally better quality than if you buy it from like garden centre, for example. And you can sketch designs onto the hessian just with a permanent marker or something, and that allows you to basically almost paint by numbers and fill in your rug hooking based on the design that you sketched out. So the next bit of equipment after the rug backing is fairly self-explanatory. In rug hooking, you're cutting strips of fabric, and I find the best way to do that is with a really good pair of fabric scissors. At Ragged Life, we actually use rag rug scissors, and we cut our strips by cutting through lots of layers of fabric at the same time, almost like cutting a Swiss roll. These are the tank of the scissor world, and they're made for sheer power. And finally, the fun part of rug hooking is choosing your fabrics that are going to build up your design. And here in the UK, we work with all manner of different fabrics. So we work with everything from jersey material, so old t-shirts, lycra, sports tops, laddered tights, knitted jumpers, denim jeans. If you can cut it into strips and pull it through the backing, it's fair game, basically. But easier fabrics are ones that are thin, soft and pliable, and hard fabrics are ones that are thick, stiff and textured. So easy is things like jersey, tights, fleece. Hard fabrics are things like denim, leather, thick upholstery material. As well as that, you tend to avoid too many fabrics that shed a lot because it just gives a very rough appearance to your rag rigging. In the US, they mainly use woolen materials, and traditionally here in the UK, that's what was used. So if you're wanting to do a kind of more historic style of hooked rug, then you can just stick entirely to woolen materials. We actually do sell woolen blanket yarn on the Ragged Life website, but you can equally just cut up old woolen coats or blankets to make a more traditional style of rug. To learn how to prepare your fabrics to do rug hooking, you might want to check out my other video, but in general you want to cut your strips between 1 and 2 centimeters on average. But with thicker fabric, you cut them a little bit narrower. And with thinner fabrics, you cut them wider. Other equipment which you may have come across if you've looked into rug hooking are frames. Personally, I don't ever work with a frame because I've got used to working without, and it's more common in the UK not to work with a rug frame. However, some people find it easier to keep the rug backing taut while they're working, in which case you could have a little play around with different types of frame. So we have giant kind of almost embroidery hoops, which are a good intro to rug frames. There are floor standing ones, and there's even ones that just sit on a table. So have a little look and see what appeals. And the final bit of equipment, which we don't work with so much here in the UK, but is more common in the US, is fabric strip cutting machines. So these are really nifty bits of equipment where you can put different dies in and they'll cut the strips to different widths. These only work with woven woolen cloth, however. So they won't work with things like t-shirt material, cotton, anything thinner and more varied in texture. So scissors are definitely the way forward if you're wanting to do more of a mixed media rug hooked piece. Now onto the rug hooking itself, and it doesn't matter where you start on the piece of hessian, but generally I like to outline my shapes first and then kind of work my way inwards to the center of them. And you start off by getting your strip of fabric, and you want to hold it taut between your fingers. If you knit or crochet, it's a similar kind of motion that you're trying to get, and you want to create tension so that this is easier to hook onto on the underside of the hessian. So once you've got your strip nice and taut, you then place it underneath the hessian in the area that you're going to be working into. Then you take your rug hook, and from the front of the hessian, you're poking through from the front of the rug canvas to the underside. And generally you want to poke a little bit more through so that you've widened the hole enough that it's going to be easy for you to pull your fabric strip back through. And I'm now going to show you the underside of the hessian. So my hook is now through to the back, and you want to grab onto the center of the fabric strip that you've held nice and taut. Make sure it's held in there really securely, then pull through a little tail to the top. And as a beginner, you want to leave that tail at least 2 centimeters, because as a beginner, it's easy to accidentally pull it through to the underside and have to start again. These tails get trimmed at the end of your rug hooking so that it all looks nice and neat. You then miss out roughly 2 strands in the hessian. Once again, push a decent amount of the hook through. I'm just working on the line of the H. Then my hook is through to the back of the rug canvas once again. You wrap the fabric strip nice and tight into the hook. If you leave this bit baggy into the hook, you'll end up with a loop on the back of the rug hooking. So you want to grab on, hold it nice and taut, and then once you've got it held nice and taut, you're aiming to pull a little loop through to the top. And I generally turn my hook upside down to get out of the hook, out of the loop. So it's almost like when your hook is pointing upwards, the fabric is held on it securely, but when you turn it upside down, that's when you can get the fabric strip so that you're no longer attached to it. And then you miss out a couple of strands, wrap the fabric strip into the hook, and just pull another little loop through to the top. And you can make these loops whatever height you want. So you can make them really short if you want to, or really high, almost like petally in a kind of blousey look. But the height that you pull your loops dictates how close you need to space your loops together. So if you make your loops really high, the amount of fabric and the coverage is called the bloom of the loop, the amount that this covers of the surrounding area. And when you've got them high, visually, when you look from the top of the rug canvas, this will cover more of the surrounding hessian. Whereas if you make this loop incredibly short, and you can do that by kind of pulling the strip on the underside, if you space your loops too far apart, you end up with this gap showing. So you want these, I think as a beginner, you want these to be minimum just under a centimetre. Then I like to turn my rug canvas and my hessian because I personally prefer to pull from the left to the right when I'm doing my rug hooking. And you can see that you're just kind of working your way along that drawn line on the hessian. And if I was in the US, I would be making sure that my loops were all facing the same direction, but this is British rug hooking, and in our way of doing this technique, it doesn't matter if your fabric strip twists and turns on the back. The only difference would be if your fabric has a right side and a wrong side. So if this was yellow on one side and white on the other side, if you twist the fabric strip too much, you'll get too much of the wrong side of the fabric showing. So that's the only time when I concentrate on keeping my fabric strip facing the same direction. And when you do this technique, you want the rug hooking to look lovely and flat on the back. You don't want there to be loops on the back. It needs to be nice and flat because this is what protects your rug so that the fabric doesn't fall out. If you've got lumpy bumpy bits on the back, when you walk on your rug, they're more likely to be irritated and pull things out. When you reach the end of a strip, or say I just wanted to change colour, you pull this end through to the top of the hessian. So I'm just going to pull this tail all the way through. Bear with me because it's a bit of a long strip, this one. Then you take your scissors and you trim the end of the strip to the same height as all of your loops. And you do exactly the same thing with the first end. It's personal preference whether you do this as you go along or whether you do it at the end of the project. Personally, I prefer to do it as I go along. And then when you start a new strip, ideally, I start it in the same hole that I just finished in. So I would push through from the front to the back. Once again, do that technique where you hold the fabric strip nice and taut, grab onto the strip, pull an end through to the top. And then you would just keep going. The main kind of thing that you need to watch out for in this technique is keeping your fabric strip almost like nice and taut on the back. You can see that I almost like keep it as tight into the hook as possible. Keeping your loops nice and consistent in height. And I would say if you rotate the rug canvas, it's easier for you to get into a rhythm than if you try pulling the loop in a awkward direction. So if I tried pulling this way, I'm more likely to pull my previous loop shorter. So just feel what feels good for you. And once you've kind of filled in the rug canvas and the hessian base, it ends up looking a bit like this. These two examples show you the difference between when you've got a short loop, you can see the hay much clearer, and where you've got a longer loop, the hay looks bigger because the bloom of the loops is covering more of the rug canvas, but it also means that you lose some of the design definition. So at this stage, I've kind of made my way around the shape, and then I would keep building up this H, and then once I'd finished the outline of the H, I'd just come in and just work my way on the inside. And the aim of the game is that you're trying to cover this hessian so that you can't see any of it. So when I come to fill in the center of this H, if I was doing really short loops, I may have to do another 2 rows on the inside of the outline to kind of fill this vertical part of the H. But if I was doing a longer loop and I had like a higher bloom, like the bloom of the loop was covering more of the hessian, then I may only have to do 1 row to kind of make my way down here. And the aim of the game is you want to completely cover the rug canvas and the hessian. Because I prefer to hem my hessian before I start a project, rather than having to secure it at the end, you can make a decision whether you're happy rag rugging through the actual hem itself, in which case you're rug hooking 1 row where you have to go through 3 layers of the hessian, which can be a little bit tricky to do, but you've just got to use a bit of brute force and it's only 1 row around the whole edge. Or at the end of the project, you can choose to fold the hem under at the end to disappear it. Personally, I prefer rug hooking to sewing, so I always just force a row through that treble thickness. And it means you get a really, really clean edge doing it that way. Brilliant! So thank you so much for watching my rug hooking tutorial. If you'd like to see some of the common mistakes that beginners make in this technique, then you might want to check out my next video. And if you've liked the content, please do like this video, hit subscribe, and stay tuned for more Ragged Life videos. Thank you.